Welcome, guys. We are back for another episode of The Lock-In. My name is David Lapp, and I'm joined, as usual, by my fellow Unibet Poker ambassador and now beer pong partner, Dara O'Kearney. Dara, we're just back from UKIPT Dublin, where you final tabled a high roller and got second in the side event and got second in the beer pong. What was your experience at the festival?
It was pretty good overall. I mean, considering I'd gone into this 2 months without a cash, and like that might sound like much, but we had the Norwegians, we had the Irish Open, we had the Dublin Poker Festival, so it was probably the worst run of my career, and I kind of forgot what it felt like to even cash a tournament. So very, very happy with my min cash in the very first, very small side event. I didn't do a Wsop. I wasn't counting it as a cash just because I'd won a bounty. I did actually have to be in the money before I was counting it as a cash. And then followed it up with the high roller, which Neal will remember. We had quite the epic bubble there, and then got second in the very last event with a second in beer pong, which, to be honest, never really expected to be in. Never really saw myself as a beer ponger. Never had any real aspirations in the area of beer ponging, but yeah, we somehow got roped in, and since you are gluten intolerant and can't drink beer, that made me the designated drinker.
Yeah, you did all the drinking for us. I did offer that I could participate if they made it gin pong, but they were having none of it. You sort of spoiled it there, but maybe people don't realize yet. This week we are joined by a return guest. He was actually on the show, I want to say like maybe the third or fourth ever show, back when we didn't really know what this show was. He has been no stranger to the chip race down the years. Either it is his second appearance on this show, he must have 4 appearances on the other one. He is an EPT, WSOP, WPT champion, but much more importantly, right now he is the UKIPT Dublin champion. He's our great pal, Neal Farrell. Neal, welcome.
Thanks very much, guys. Good to be on.
It's great to have you on this show, Neal, especially right after your victory. Let's start right there with the UKIPT, actually. Dara gave his little summary of his adventures over the week. We've just returned home. Dara obviously didn't have to travel too far. I'm back in Malta. You're back in Scotland. You outlasted 277 other entrants to lock up this victory and a 54k score, but you came into the final table, the short stack. You had, I think, about 500,000 chips, and Leon, who was the prohibitive chip leader, had 5 million chips. You got heads up with him in the end. Can you talk us through that final table?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty crazy. It was one of the wildest final tables I've ever been at. There was so I was saying, there was not many fucks given throughout the entirety of the table by anyone at any point. I think this would be a good antithesis on one of Dara's ICM books, but it was a lot of fun, because it was like, normally when you make a final table, it's a lot of people playing very tight, very correctly, so to speak, a lot more cautious. But this one was just more, everyone that was there was trying to win it. So it was, there was a lot of chips flying about, and I did my classic strategy of winning every all-in, and ultimately prevailed, fortunately. So but it was a lot of fun. It was it was definitely, I would say, maybe the wildest final I've ever been at.
Awesome. Sounds like great crack altogether. There were, of course, plenty of other events. The high roller, as Dara mentioned there, particularly memorable, actually, it's got to be said, Wednesday and Thursday. Dara, you and Neal played possibly the best bubble of the year. That's the way I described it. I was actually on an outer table playing my main event, and the crack just seemed to be unreal. Every 10 minutes or so, one of you guys was all in with like 2 big blinds, somehow survived. It seemed to go on for 3, almost 4 hours at one point. And I remember sitting at the table opposite going, this would have been the thing to rail. I'm actually sorry I'm playing now. This seems like so much fun. Can you talk us through maybe the epic things that happened as you went from 8 to 7 players, Dara?
Yeah, I mean, it went on for almost 4 hours, I think. And obviously there were a lot of all-ins in that time, which could have broken it, and they all went the wrong or right way, depending on how you looked at it. Myself and Niall were in I guess I can't really call it a pissing contest. Essentially, it was a hold your piss in contest, where we were trying to basically just tell the other guy, like, I'm going to outweight you. I mean, I was actually goading me that he was going to let me get down to 1 big blind before he made his move. And I felt very much the same. We did eventually get it in against each other in a chance to break the bubble. Niall's ace-9 held against my jacks, and had my jacks cracked his ace-9, obviously it would have been a different final table, but that left me with 2 big blinds after that. So I wasn't massively confident of getting through the bubble. I certainly wasn't massively confident of lasting about 3 hours with those 2 big blinds. There were some really funny hands in there. I mean, I remember there was one hand with queens, which Niall found so funny, he actually had to leave the table. He was laughing so much. There was just very good banter between the two of us. I mean, it was annoying to me that it was somebody as experienced as Niall. That was my fellow slugger in these things, because generally I just kind of wait for the other guy to blow up, but Niall wasn't going to do that. And and as it happened, we both got through the bubble, which was quite miraculous.
Some poor other guy got coolered on our left.
Ivan Tononi got absolutely coolered when I was sitting with 1.75 big blinds under the gun +1. And Niall actually laddered all the way to third, which was incredible. So if you think about Niall's 2 short stack performances, third in the high roller and actually won the main event. I mean, that's pretty epic. I did an interview with Greg. His I call him his camera monkey, but I've been told by Niall I have to refer to him as BAFTA award-winning director and producer. So let's go with that. But I did an interview with Greg, and I said that people think I'm very good with short stacks, but Niall is actually brilliant with short stacks as well. Niall plays every stack side really well. So that was a big reason why that bubble went on so long. Basically, no mistakes, no rash moves.
Well, I have to say, I watched, I think it was probably the showdown with the ace-9 and the jacks. And Neal, it would be fair to say your decorum after the hand was lacking?
I would say if there was ever a time to whip out the penalty for excessive celebration, that might have been it. There was quite a few of what we call get it up you fist pumps were on display there, but it was just a combination because like Dara had I think I was all in for 4 bigs and Dara had 6, and the whole time I was just saying, I'm going to outlast you. Don't think I won't sit here all day, because I will. If I can't cash this tournament, I'm going to make sure it's fucking impossible for you to win it. Just out of spite, and just trying to get it obviously just bantering back and forth. But yeah, it was I don't know if it's just kind of the result of how my careers went, but when I got it in against the jacks, I was just already feeling bad for Dara. I was I'm very unlucky for you that you've been coolered in such a manner. But no, it was a lot of fun. But the thing that I think helped most was they had this great playlist playing, some absolutely great tunes. So it was I wasn't so, normally you'd be I'm bored and playing poker or whatever, but it's the music was going with, there was a few drinks had. It was fun. It was the most fun. I was sort of saying, when the bubble kept not bursting, I was normally you want the bubble to burst so much. And I'm nah, I'm fucking enjoying this. Let's keep it going. So it was good. It was a lot of fun. A very fun tournament in a lot of ways.
Yeah, the music list was courtesy of Nick O'Hara's Spotify playlist, I believe, which is a real feature of tournaments in the Bonington that Nick is involved in. He brings along his playlist, and it is pretty impeccable for people of our taste. Let's say there's almost nothing bad on there.
Yeah, it was spot on. It was it was great. We had some side bets on which band would come on next and stuff like that, and kept me going anyway.
Well, between those 2 results, Neal, you said in a recent interview with Paul Seaton, I think it was, and I quote, "I think that might be me finally even on trips to Dublin." I'm interested to know if you are including bar bills in that tally.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be close, right? I mean, yeah, €6 a pint. I think I could probably say I'm a small winner in Ireland, which is nice.
Well, the other side event at the UKIPT Dublin that got some headlines was the mystery bounty. Dara, you have gone and done a decent bit of work actually on the strategic adjustments on these. In fact, you recorded a seminar on them just last night. I believe you are probably selling video copies of that seminar, or you might be doing future seminars related to that stuff. Again, I'll let you do your own plug-in in a second, but can you tell us about what kind of material is in that new course, let's say, and whether there might be enough to turn it into a book?
Yeah, it's something I have to admit, the very first time I ever played a mystery bounty in EPT Prague, which is not that long ago, I sat down and completely oblivious to the fact that the bounties don't kick in until a certain point of the tournament. I thought it was just like a normal bounty, and so I was completely unprepared for it. So I did spend all of day one in Prague because the bounties didn't kick in until day two. First of all, kicking myself for having regged right from the start. And second of all, thinking about what the strategic implications were of this, the fact that the bounties didn't come in until day two. It's fair to say it's not the most complex of formats, but notwithstanding that, people are making absolutely massive mistakes. People really are either over adjusting or under adjusting to the mystery bounty element, and particular to the big prize. Like, if the big prize is in play, it feels like everybody is just the biggest. It's 9 Genghis Khans at the table, all trying to get each other's bounties. And as soon as that disappears, everybody kind of goes, "Oh well, now it's just a normal tournament again," which is not really the way it works at all. And that's kind of what the webinar / video, which will shortly be available, Barry's getting it ready at the moment, makes the point. It's just how to quantify the bounty element and therefore make sure you're adjusting to the right amount or the wrong amount. These are going to be absolutely massive. I mean, there's one coming up in the Wsop, which is 1,000 buy-in. And actually, a lot of the examples we used in the webinar last night focused specifically on that format, where 70% of the buy-in goes to the normal prize pool and 30% goes to the mystery bounty. But the interesting thing is they've guaranteed one mystery bounty of 1 million, which for 1,000 buy-in is fairly epic. And that will actually skew the thing while that's still in play. That's obviously going to make the whole bounty element much more important.
Yeah, the most important strategy for that tournament is to swap with Daniel Strelitz, because he will win that $1 million bounty. That is already gone. So basically swap and just do what you want, and then you win 20% of $1 million.
We see we've got our Irish version of that guy. We all want to swap with Smidge.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say that's my second mystery bounty that I've played. My first was when I bubbled one at the Irish Open. I was shocked by the lack of understanding. You mentioned it there. They're not overly complicated strategic adjustments, but like nobody was making any whatsoever as far as I could see. Nobody really like factored in how valuable the bounties are, how effectively more chips that puts in every pot, if you want to kind of frame it that way, which sort of makes for a lot of any two spots, but people were not going with any two. In fact, I had quite a long 5 minutes while I was being put in the tank, or while my opponent was in the tank, when I shoved ace queen before they called it off with tens, and I had 13 bigs. So that was the kind of crazy stuff we were seeing. In the end, I got a bit unlucky. I lost a 3-way all in with my aces against fours and ace queen to put myself chip leader in an amazing spot with those bounties still in play. But notwithstanding a bit of bad fortune there, I just thought, well, this is just an amazing tournament full of value. And actually anybody who either watches your course now or spends a little bit of time working out these factors could very likely end up in, the last 20, last 30, whatever it is, when the bounties kick in a tournament where 25 of those 30 people don't really understand the adjustments. And it's just amazing because they turn down all these profitable spots, which ultimately sort of leave you more profitable spots. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's always the same with new formats. Like, people just don't work out the strategy from the start. Most people learn by just observation. So over time, as people sort of, a few people figure it out and they start playing in a certain way and they start doing well, and other people start copying them, it does kind of get around. But you see, literally every new format, this happens. People just don't adjust properly at the start. And, we spent the previous evening, we worked out that the bounty aspect was so big in that tournament because only 15% of the field paid. So bounty's only on 15% of people. But yet over half the prize pool actually was going into the bounty. So that meant that the bounty was worth 7.5 starting stacks, which completely skewed the strategy. You add those 225,000 chips to every single pot, and pretty much everything becomes a call now.
Yeah, it's going to be a really great value format till Dara fucking ruins it with the way.
Well, Neal, actually, on that subject, you were on the show a couple of years ago. I think it was maybe 2 visits ago, and you talked about how much you dislike PKOs, which were sort of the new fandangle thing of the time. I don't know whether that's before or after Dara got his book out to ruin those as well. But you did talk about how much you love vanilla poker. Do you still feel that way?
Well, I've not had the chance to play Mystery Bounty yet because, humble brags, but I've actually, the last few I've been in, I've still been in like main events and stuff, so I've not been able to play them. They do look like a lot of fun and stuff. for me, it's just me being Scrooge, you know, like PKOs are like, I think they are like vital for the ecosystem because they spread the money around. But I'm like, I don't want things that are good for the ecosystem. I want things that are good for fucking Feraldo, you know. I want all the money coming to the guys that are doing the best, you know. So that's, you know, it's just me being, you know, miserly. But no, I think they look like a lot of fun, and I'll definitely be playing a couple in Vegas coming up. I'm excited to see how long it is before us fucking geeks ruin them by figuring out like late reg last minute. You know, they're gonna have to do something to like sort this, like some kind of like have a short late reg on them, or maybe offer like they do the kind of high rollers where they give you some of your rake back if you reg on time and stuff, because it'll take us, you know, it's same as anything in poker. Like you'll see wild mistakes just now, but then there'll be a few smart, like not even smart people, a few competent people will work it out, and it'll be like, right, you don't play at all, you late reg at the last moment, and then you're going to end up with all the nitty pros registered at the last moment. It will fucking ruin another fun thing again, because that's what poker players do. But so they will come up this point where they'll have to do something. I would imagine it'll be some kind of cut off on the late reg or something.
Yeah.
But again, that will negatively affect numbers just because obviously less time at reg means less things. But they will. I'm interested to see how they'll combat the hordes of geek pros trying to ruin it for everyone as usual, you know. And I include myself in there, you know.
Yeah, the late reg thing would be a big thing. I mean, Stars completely messed that up in Prague, where they actually allowed people to late reg into the exact point at which the bounties kicked in, which just made it stupidly profitable to do that. I mean, there were guys who late reg, and there were 3 of them on my table, and they could already take the other 2 guys' bounties, which were worth 3 times what they had paid for them. So the organizers will work that stuff out. I mean, obviously I'm biased because I've written a book on them, but I actually think PKOs are amazing for the ecosystem, not just for the reason that Niall gave, but for example, they cut out a lot of the things that recreations just don't like. You know, the late reg thing, it's a huge disadvantage to late reg at PKO. So we us nitty pros can't, you know, hang back and max late reg them. We're actually hurting ourselves if we do that. There's also never any reason to stall in a PKO, because, you know, you don't want to hang around short stack. You want to gamble to the point where you can cover people and get bounties. So it's very much everything about the format is conducive to what recreation's like, you know, a gambly format with no stalling and everybody in from the start. Mystery bounties aren't quite there yet, but I think organizers will tweak them to the point where they're close enough.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think a sort of 6 maybe levels of late reg, or even less again, would sort of repair a lot of that. And then if you maybe, like, everyone's going for the sort of 1/3 or half the prize pool going into the bounty pool, and that's certainly creating like bigger ones at the beginning, maybe when, you know, they're not big fields yet. But I think as maybe the fields in these things get bigger and they get more popular, and people sort of start tweaking them as people play them better, I think they'll realize that something more around 1/4 of the prize pool, maybe 1/3 at a push, is the right point. Otherwise you are creating too many any 2 spots, and actually that just kind of removes any skill or nuance from the game.
You say that though, but I mean that would be possibly the sensible thing to do. But what I think a lot of operators will do is get big fucking numbers in the envelopes. Yep. So let's go. Yep. Welcome to the Wheel of Fortune, you know. So we'll see how that goes. But
completely, yeah. I think that's what it'll be like. I think it's the buzz of the big bounty. That's what really creates the buzz. And the organizers are just going, well, the more we put into the bounty pool, the more that'll happen, and the more people we eliminate before the bounties kick in. Also, the bigger the bounties will be, which, you know, it will reduce to the game eventually to just like under the gun shoves, because he covers some people behind. Anybody who covers him calls, and it's not. Then people will go, "This is kind of a shit format, really."
What a couple of years we'll get out of it. God.
It's true. Well, wrapping up the UKIPT news, guest on last week's Chip Race show, Fergal Nealon, also cashed the mystery bounty alongside myself, but he won the karaoke too for his duet with Willie Elliott, as the pair yelled loudly the Beastie Boys hit "You Gotta Fight for Your Right to Party." What it lacked in tunefulness, it more than made up for in spiritedness, so fair play to the lads. Finally then, Dara, you bagged a couple of seconds. We've mentioned them there, obviously.
Are we counting beer pong, really?
Beer pong, well, we're definitely counting beer pong. Definitely counting.
It was on the Hendon Mob, right? Beer pong, Ireland.
karaoke, beer. I have Chinese poker. I think that's got as much relationship to poker as well as beer pong. So I think that's probably fine. But Dara, you are coming up on 190 live cashes, and
I thought you were going to say you're coming up on 190. I'm not quite that old yet.
You're going up on 190 live cashes, and actually, you sort of touched on this earlier, but I wanted to maybe get you to delve into it a bit more, which is that how much was that cashless streak? You mentioned maybe it was 20 tournaments, 25 tournaments, whatever it was. How much was it preying on your mind? Because I think regardless of our level of experience, and you've got way more than most, I think it always affects you a little bit. And I think regardless of your lack of experience, of your level of experience, I think everybody is susceptible to just it, preying on their mind ever so slightly, even if they're very good at blocking that stuff out. So can you talk a little bit about like maybe that specific experience? I remember another one, which I actually, you'll notice I spared the tweet this time, where I think I made reference to well done having a Hendon mob that looks like a guy that didn't die back in March or whatever it would have been.
Yeah. Thanks for that, David.
No worries. But maybe can you talk a little bit about downswings, I suppose, or even those kinds of periods and how you just sort of mentally reset?
Yeah, it's a weird one, because first of all, this time I didn't actually track it, and it's kind of difficult with all the bullets that you do and stuff now. Like back when I had my 31 cashless streak or whatever it was, I don't even remember the number now. I was consciously counting it down because I never actually had a cashless streak in the double figures before that. I think my previous worst was like 8 or something, which was ridiculous. But so I wasn't tracking it this time, but I was obviously aware that it was maybe even bigger than the previous streak. It sort of, I'd say the way it manifested itself was a kind of depression every time I went out to play. I think, well, here I go again. I'm obviously not going to cash this again. And I'm going to
every time you get your money and flipping with like,
I'm going to feel a bit sad. And I was handing the money over to register and going, well, that's the end of that. Like that's money. That's money that I'm not getting back. I don't think it affected the way I played at all. I like to think not anyway. On the bubble of the one where I broke my streak, there was a spot where I had a fairly obvious reshove. And in the back of my mind, I heard a little voice go, but that guy over there has 4 big blinds. You could just fold and wait for him to bust. But I did reshove. So I don't think it affected the way I played. But it was a small knockout tournament. Maybe had it been the high roller, it might have been where I had to try and break my streak. It might have been different. That was a fairly significant min cash. It's also fair to say that like I've been going pretty well online in the same time, and I do kind of see it all as one big thing. So, online and live are not two completely separate things to me. I found it very heartening, for example, after 2 weeks of bricking everything out in City West, then I came back and played a Sunday and had a fairly decent winning Sunday. It was like a reaffirmation of like, I do actually know how to play it. I haven't completely forgotten. And, you said it to me yourself, like I've been reporting bust outs to you, et cetera, and you characterized it as every time you get into the flip or the first all in, you just seem to lose. So not too far from the bubble. And that's pretty much the way I remember the streak. It's not that I wasn't going deep. I was getting into position every time, but then you had spots where you had to get it in and it just seemed to be losing them all. Obviously, with greater experience, it becomes easier to take this stuff. You also have just a big picture. I played whatever number of live tournaments I played now. I've cashed almost 200. So a cashless streak in the middle of that doesn't seem as significant as it would have 14 years ago when I was starting out. And also as online players, we kind of know that live sample sizes are meaningless anyway.
Well, I do find that the doubt creeps in during those kind of periods. Sure. I especially remember it from online when I used to play big volume. And yeah, you just beyond that sort of 20k downswing, I don't know how many buy-ins, probably my average buy-in was like $100 at the time. And it just feels so rotten. You're in the shower, just fucking feeling depressed all the time. Really question, like, was I ever any good at this game? And then suddenly like the next day you just like win $8,000. And then you're like, oh, I'm actually, I remember I am good at this game. It's just meant to happen, but it does happen. But it does happen that way where I think no matter how much success you've had, that those doubts somehow do still manage to creep in. Neal, have you had any particularly long cashless streaks or downswings over the years? I know you mentioned maybe one more recently after a bad last trip before the pandemic sort of closed everything down.
Yeah, I think just before COVID, I was on a 250, 300k downswing. which was accentuated with the very last trip to Uruguay, where I did over 100K in one trip, which is hard to do, not impossible, but very hard, via 6 10K bullets in the main. Stone bubbled the 25K after being in twice, and did 6 bullets in the 1K as well. And each time I was just like, I did 6 bullets in the 10K main, and registration is closed, I'm out. So that was a particularly low morale situation. But then I was like, for me, normally, like when that happens, I'm like, right, I need to get out and get it out of my system. And then COVID hits. I was like, no, you're gonna have 2 years to fucking stew on it. I was like, all right, wonderful, this is great. So I'm sat there the whole time. I've my girlfriend gives birth, so we have a toddler in the house. I'm not even studying, I'm not playing online. So this whole 2 years, I'm like slowly getting worse and worse at poker compared to everyone else. 200 or 300K in the hole, going, this might not have been the best career choice after all, you know. So definitely, like, you do, like, even like, I mean, I'm probably one of the more confident players that on tour, but you still get these kind of, like, when I came back and played World Series, I was really rusty and I played really poorly for the first few bits. I played the first event was a 25K as well, and I was like, right, straight back in, fuck it, on the horse, and I played horrifically, played so badly. And then I was like, well, that's good. Snap 25K down for the series. Let's go. You know, which maybe wasn't the best idea, but had a couple of like runs in Vegas and ended up like up about 10K for Vegas, which was a kind of salvageable trip. And then the start of this year, the wee man's getting a bit older now and stuff like that, so he doesn't constantly need 24-hour don't jump out the window protection around him. So I started doing a bit more study, and then I was like, right, I'm going to go to EPT and stuff, and started to get back into it. And I'm on what I've got the most covert heater of all time at the moment, although it's less covert now because I actually won the main. But I was basically having like a 400% ROI by getting 16th and everything. So like no one knows that you've been doing well. You're just constantly making like 4 times your buy-in everywhere. So like, and I feel now that like after playing again, I'm feeling really confident again, and I feel like. But again, it's like the flip side of like when you're running bad and you're on downswing, you maybe start to play a little bit bad, and then when I'm on this kind of weird hidden heater where I'm deep in every single tournament that I play just now. I'm like, oh, that's right, I forgot I'm the best fucking player that ever lived. You know, you go far off the other end. You know, so you need to try and normalize it in the middle for both exteriors, but it's hard, you know, because you're human. You like. You know, at the moment I'm just sat playing poker, especially like in the UKIPT and stuff, and I'm sat there going, I know what everyone has every hand. This is great. Poker is the easiest game ever done. This is fantastic, blah, blah, blah. And then, but that's because I've won 6 flips in a row. I think I'm fucking great again, you know? So you just have to try and center your emotions and not, you know, don't think you're the best in the world when you're running well, and don't think you're the worst. It's one of the most important things in poker, I think.
I thought you had that experience because you seem to always be on William Kassouf's table, and if you wait long enough, he does basically tell you what he has. So.
Yeah, I mean, that helps too, you know, of course. But no, I mean, to be honest, the UKIPT with like 2 tables left down, I didn't know what anyone had at any point. There was some weird shit going down. But it was great to watch. I was enjoying it, you know. But yeah, it was yeah, no, it definitely doubts do creep in even. And I think like people I talk to a lot, even at the highest levels, these guys are undoubtedly some of the greatest poker players that have ever lived, and they go through a little rough patch and they're like, fuck, am I shite at this game, you know? So it does happen all the way through.
Yeah, no, absolutely can relate. Moving on, but maybe like segueing gently from UKIPT, but not completely. Dara, you and I have been, I suppose, what I could describe as outspoken critics of Pokerstars, particularly in the Amaya era. Under Flutter now, Stars seem to be on a path to undoing a lot of those negative changes that were made in that era. But I feel like this UKIPT Dublin stop demonstrated how, despite clear progress, obviously, by them, it's not going to be plain sailing either. Monaco was obviously a big success the week before, but the poor turnout in Dublin seems to be indicative of a wider brand problem, I think, maybe a messaging problem. And despite great people like Deborah Leone and Willie Elliott in their ranks, a winning people back problem maybe as well. Poker players clearly have long memories. That was sort of obvious with some sort of maybe unpleasant forum Facebook exchanges that some of the members of the team had to endure at the hands of some Irish people who were rightly upset about things that they perceived to be wrong. Maybe there was some miscommunication as well, but I think poker players, maybe there's a bit of once bitten, twice shy, and actually winning them back is going to be quite difficult. What do you think the recreational player wants, Dara? What do you think the professional player wants from them, and maybe poker, live poker writ large, now that we're sort of coming back and all the brands are trying to rebuild? And how much of the live recreational and the live pro, how much of the stuff overlaps?
There's a reasonable amount of overlap. I mean, one thing both recreationals and pros don't like is the feeling that they're being gouged, either on rake or hotel rooms or whatever it might be. And when I wrote my piece about Prague, that was one of the few minor criticisms I had on it, rake specifically on the hypers. And a few recreationals, said, well, we don't care about rake. We just look at how much it costs to enter a tournament and what the first prize is. That might be true for some recreations, but I think it's not true for all recreationals. I think a lot of recreationals are, they're perfectly aware if something is egregious. So that's probably where the area of overlap is. Ultimately, the recreations are the king, really. Whatever they want, we should just kind of go along with, because without the recreations, there's no real game. So that's probably where Stars have done very badly in recent years compared to the other major operators. They just haven't appealed very well and very directly at all to recreationals. They have some specific problems in Ireland as well, which I think affected numbers. Their messaging in Ireland has been quite bad. They literally launched the announcement of this stop with Ireland covered in a huge Union Jack, which is about as big a faux pas as you can make.
It wasn't even on the map. It was UKIPT Dublin stop, and there was no Ireland.
That's right. Yeah, we were cut off. Northern Ireland was there, I think, maybe somewhere under the Union Jack. But
the border was just a big picture of Margaret Thatcher. Like that.
Yeah, it was fairly clueless. Now, they obviously have a high-profile Irish ambassador, Fintan Hand, who's an absolute phenomenon on Twitch, but doesn't really play very much live poker. He did show up one of the days, and he created quite a bit of buzz and stir. But Stars don't seem very good on that stuff either. Other operators, they sign popular ambassadors in the areas, and they make sure that they show up for their live stops, and that creates a certain type of buzz as well. Stars didn't seem to do that. I think the only pro they had there was Felix, who's a great Twitcher, but he twitches in German, so that kind of limits his Irish audience considerably. It was just weird that there was no real attempt to even recognize that this tournament was in Ireland, and therefore maybe they had to do some special stuff for Ireland. I think that was a big part of the problem. To be fair to them, you said the numbers were disappointing, and a lot of people said that to me, that the numbers were disappointing. There were less than 200 unique players in the main event, but I think people are remembering the glory days of the UKIPT, but they forget that the first couple of seasons were very, very withered, and the last season was particularly withered. I attended the last ever UKIPT in Birmingham, where the high roller didn't even start, because I think David Doherty was the only person who registered for it. I think he actually got a trophy just simply by registering. And there were side events where they were paying like 3 or 4 people because the fields were so small. In terms of what recreations want, I think there are a couple of specific things. A lot of recreationals express surprise that there was no feature table, that there was no live stream. People love getting their mug on we can't really call it TV, but on a camera. That definitely creates a buzz. And I remember the first couple of UKIPT seasons were very withered. And what really transformed it is when they started having it on TV. Now, it was on at 3 a.m. in the morning or whatever, but at least people could, set their video recorders, which were a thing back then, and watch it afterwards. So that's one thing. I think when organizers look at tournaments and they look to cut costs, live stream is an obvious one, but I do think it adds a lot. I also think the new satellite format, which they're insisting is the only one that they're going to have going forward, the target stack satellite, a lot of people just looked at that and thought, what even is that? I'm not sure I know how to play that. And a lot of recreations said to me that they came in intending to play a few satellites, and then they saw that there was this new weird format which they didn't understand, and they therefore decided to skip the satellites. So I think that probably affected numbers as well.
Yeah, turning to you, Neil, I want to sort of maybe focus in on one of the things Dara said there. It seems like Pokerstars, maybe in the last few years, through the kitchen sink at content creators and now utterly dominate in that regard. I think they have 4 of the top 6 streaming channels, 2 award-winning podcasts. But what they lack now, and it was very clear to me, was a sort of a traveling band of live pros on the roster who will attend the events, bring a bit of star power to the room, you know, and are just sort of good in a live atmosphere, sort of well-known people, friendly people, and will sort of do an ambassadorial job on the ground at some level. It almost feels like Willie Elliott, who is their player liaison officer, almost acts as a de facto one of those, but that's not really his job either. It does seem like Willie sort of, you know, just seems to be everywhere, and he's great at his job, of course. But it also feels like, well, that's like that should be carried by, you know, at least a couple of named ambassadors, as you said, Dara. You know, particularly if they're from the region, that helps hugely. 2, Neil, as somebody who exudes star power himself, do you agree with that?
I certainly exude something, but yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's to be fair, Stars, the people that are working there now, especially on the live side of things, are top people who will endeavor to get it right. It's now like their actual aim is to make the game like better, you know. It is actually like, rather than the Amaya years where it was, let's try and convert as many people into online accounts as we can for the least amount of cost, very corporate like. And now it's, you know, you name drop Deborah and Willie and a lot of the other guys, like they really do care about it. I think you're right. They're right in a certain like there is a kind of, I think there was a lot of move towards, because like Twitch exploded a few years ago, and I think all the sites in one way or another went, we need in on this, quick, get loads of people of that. And it's definitely still a very important thing. But you're right, like there was a definite move away from the kind of like the live pro stuff, like your Elkies, your Jake Cody's, all these kind of guys got replaced essentially. And again, don't get me wrong, like the content guys are great players, they do a great job, and it's very important, but you do need both, I think. I mean, speaking from my decades of experience in running poker sites, you know, but this is just my opinion. But you definitely do need that kind of presence there. You know, it's I remember when I first started going to, it was the first live event I think I went to that was a big buy-in, because I won a satellite through a magazine. It was UKIPT Coventry, and I remember seeing now my good friend Tom Middleton there, and he wasn't like a sponsored pro or anything, but he was just like a big name, and I was like, oh fucking hell, that's Tom Middleton, you know what I mean? I was super excited to see these guys, and I got to have a beer with them and that, and that was like the highlight of my trip. Now I try and avoid them if I see them, but in general, that kind of back then. Yeah, but now like that kind of, not awe, but like the excitement of seeing like these players that have done well and done it, and you get to share the arena with them and all that kind of stuff, was really appealing to me when I was starting out. So I would agree, like having that kind of presence would definitely help as well. I think one thing they maybe be slightly hamstrung with was the hotel prices in Dublin, because I was on the fence about coming, and then I looked up how much the Bonington was at night, and I wasn't going to go. And I decided I'll play the last satellite on Stars, and if I win, I'll go. And fortunately, as usual for me, I come out fucking golden as always. But yeah, I mean, I think that was going to be a tough sell for a lot of people, because you know it's a lot of money to spend to stay in the Bonington. The Bonington's all right, but it's, you know, it's not far off what we're paying in Monte Carlo, you know. So yeah, I think that as well. Also, yeah, like there may be some kind of things that like, and I find this with a lot of poker operators, and it's not just specifically Stars. I have a great anecdote about this, but I think a lot of people look at UK and Ireland as one market, and in my opinion, it's not. They're different. They are unique. There's a difference between Scotland and England. There's a difference between England and Ireland, certainly. There's a difference everywhere. And I feel like they get lumped in together too much, and it's having maybe someone like an ambassador or whatever. Like, I mean, I know Finton's more on the Twitch side of things, but having someone like if Finton was, if it wasn't in the middle of Scoop, you know, Finton would be more available to come play, even just consult, be like, yeah, this isn't going to go, like, put this way, like, not putting Ireland on the map's not going to go down well, and having a big Union Jack's not going to, like, just little things and that are different throughout the home kind of markets. And having someone that would understand those kind of things would be useful, I would imagine. Because I had one with Christ. I did a promo thing with AA 8 years ago for the main event, and they had us all dressed up in Union Jacks. And I'm like, right, fine, I'll sell my dignity. My principles are for sale. They're just,
you did it.
Yeah, no, I mean, they paid me fucking really well for it. But what happened was, it's like, we're going to do this media part where you're all going to be watching England versus Colombia and rooting on England and that. And I was like, yeah, we're going to have a word about this, because that's not quite how it works in Scotland. There's absolutely no fucking way you're getting me in front of a camera doing that. And they were really confused as to why that was happening, you know. And I was like, well, we are different, like, we're rivals, you know what I mean? And it was, you know, and it was so, like, getting that across, like, I think from people outside, they don't really maybe understand that they are in, like, they get lumped in together, and they are separate markets, in my opinion. Just like, I mean, from me playing in Scotland, me playing in Ireland, and me playing in England, I can see the differences that, you know, there are obviously poker player similarities throughout the world, but
and actually, I think if you probably lumped the Scottish and the Irish in together, neither side would mind too much.
I mean, a few Scottish, but half the Scots would love it and half the Scots would hate it.
You know? Oh, that's true too. Sorry,
but but yeah, that kind of stuff is like, I think it's easily overlooked at a corporate level, which can cause some problems and stuff. But I think, you know, I mean, to be honest, there was a lot of stuff, like, there wasn't that much advertisement. There was no stream. And I think getting the game on a screen, be it TV or a stream, is just so important nowadays. It's just massive. Particularly, like, when these were televised, you'd have all the big pros coming to play them, because they're even, like, if it's the lower end of their buy-in level, it's like, it's on Channel 4, you know, and I mean, that must have cost a lot to do or whatever. But it was such a big draw, and they became really, really must-attend events. Now, I think with the guys they've got in the team, like the likes of your Willies and Deborahs and stuff like that, and the people working with stars that I spoke to over the time, I think they will get back to something like that. They are an earnest lot. Like, they do want, like, fucking Willie, man. You must be the most poker daft person I've ever met in my entire life. He just really wants the game to be amazing. He was one of Stars' most outspoken critics during the dark years, you know, the wilderness years, where Stars managed to blow some poker dominance somehow. I mean, just looking back, just blows my mind how that was allowed to happen. So I think there will be some teething problems, because nothing goes overnight and stuff like that. But the very fact that the UKIPT is back is a great sign. And yeah, I mean, live at poker, it has been exploding recently, and the numbers were, I would say, very disappointing.
Yeah, two more points I want to make maybe on that as well before we move on is, well, the first one, I suppose, is just the price point. You know, obviously justifying cost of hotel rooms, you sort of almost need to play for more to make it sort of overall make sense. But with the exception of places like Barcelona, Prague, London, who are, you know, they're sort of the marquee events that, you know, you can certainly make it a 1K main and it'd be easy to sell it. It always felt like when UKIPT was in that sort of 550 to 770 range, that was the sweet spot too. That was when it was both, you know, very affordable for sort of pros at any level or anyone who wants to play, but also very attainable to get into from a recreational point of view, like much more satellite qualifiers coming through. And that sort of brings me to the satellite side of things, which I think, again, if it's a slightly lower price point, more people will satellite in. But also if they go back to the sort of liquidity model of let people win multiples and have tourney dollars, and they just keep playing and playing and playing, and that just generates so many seats. It's an argument Dara and I have tried to make somewhat successfully, but somewhat unsuccessfully at Unibet, because I guess Unibet, very protective of its ecosystem, and having maybe a much more fragile, smaller one, are worried about, you know, maybe strong satellite players, pros coming in and winning too much. But at the same time, there's a sort of a snowball effect of, like, if you get loads of people into the next event and everybody sees that all the people who are in the next event, they want to get into the next one. And if they see that they can, you know, win a satellite and then win some tourney dollars, which helps on the expenses side of things, or even just, you know, that they get their Sunday grind out of the tourney dollars they won on the Tuesday or whatever it was, that's really appealing. And they'll just keep recycling the money, and the money will keep going back in. And this thing will become a very sought after, everyone's going, so you got to be there kind of event. And I think that's what you're sort of trying to get to as the end point. Dara, you're obviously someone who knows the satellite ecosystem better than anyone, and maybe has a good view on an appropriate price point for this. Would you agree with that, or do you think it should stay 1,100?
I mean, I see where you're coming from, but I mean, let's not forget that less than 2 months ago there was another 1,100 in Ireland that got over 2,000 runners. I think the Irish Open got pretty much everything right. Obviously, it's a better brand in Ireland, so maybe it's an unfair comparison, but nevertheless, they had the live stream, which as I said is a big thing. They had lots and lots of side events. The side event program wasn't the best at the UKIPT. Most days there was maybe one side event, and there was some satellites, which, as I've said already, weren't proving very popular because of the format. So I don't think it's really all down to the buy-in. I think the buy-in could have been sustainable, but there just seemed to be no push behind it, to be honest. Like, online satellites didn't run a lot of the nights. I tried to register a few, and I was registered for a few, and I just got the old this tournament is now cancelled thing, which they clearly have major problems there. I mean, we remember when we basically made our living from playing satellites, and everything else was just gravy. Now, that probably went a bit too far. At the end, there was certainly far too many really good satellite grinders, and even the recreations were like, okay, I just see the same 10 people every night, and the same people seem to win all the time. So they kind of got the message that it was a bad format for them. People are giving me stick for writing the satellite book, but I actually think that was really important to sort of level the balance again between pros and recreations. Let out the secrets of what the pros know that the recreations don't, and therefore make the recreations more competitive in the satellites and get the satellites running again. And I think we have seen improvements on other sites, but Stars still seems to be kind of floundering around, not really sure what they want to do about satellites. Do they want to allow multiple seats? Do they want to bring back tournament dollars? What do they want to do exactly on that front? So, and then they have this new live format, which I said, it was the first time I actually heard quite a lot of a pushback from recreation saying, no, we don't like this new format. We prefer the traditional satellites. So I think Stars have a lot of soul searching to do on that front, or maybe just market research, rather than just throwing stuff out and seeing if it works. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't put the disappointing numbers down to the price point that much. I don't think 1,100 is beyond the reach of a lot of people in Ireland at the moment. The economy is booming here. We did get over 2,000 runners in the Irish Open at the same price point. So I'm not sure Stars can use that as an excuse.
Sure, no, fair counterpoints.
Yeah, so I would agree with that a lot. Because you remember, like, the old structure of UKIPT was always, you had the 300 euro cup, the Isle of Man Cup or the Dublin Cup, and then you'd have the main event, and you'd have the high roller, and then there'd be some like turbos and stuff that ran and kind of stuff like that. And that was the kind of, there's so many these kind of live events that are run by other companies now that follow that exact formula, because it was wildly successful. There were lower buy-ins at some of the other stops and stuff. Like I think Scotland always gets a lower buy-in. I think it's just a mild form of anti-Scottish racism, to be honest. But like, we can't fucking afford to play this, is that right? And you know what? They're spot on. But yeah, places like, I think like your Londons, Dublins, all these kind of places are your flagship ones that you could easily support. I mean, the 1,100. I think there was one of the main issues with the Satis might have been a lot of the seat only Satis don't run because fucking hotels are 175 euros a night. So it's like, even if you win a seat, you know what I mean, you're paying, like, I priced it for 5 nights. So if you win a seat for 1,100, my hotel was 875. Like, what have I won? You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, I think UKIPT kind of has, if it's going to be this kind of flagship, like the satellite tour to the EPT, I think it has to kind of stay in the kind of 1,100 to kind of maintain some of the prestige to it, because you become like a direct competitor to a lot of the kind of lower, like it loses like some. It's not like a marquee event anymore if it's like another 500, because like the 500 events are great. I mean, you see me at them showing up out of nowhere every now and then.
You had 300 events.
Yeah, man, I've had a €100 event in Mallow 4 weeks ago. Of all places. Very nice place, by the way. But yeah, in general, like I would agree with that on that.
No, fair play. There is a notable exception to sort of how maybe the overall satellite ecosystem doesn't seem to be that great. Actually, across all the sites, there doesn't seem to be the same maybe engine in that side of the game pushing into live, although live does on the whole seem to be very healthy at the moment. That exception is actually Unibet. We launched the Unibet Open packages for the event that's going to be in Malta. And this far out, and we are way far out, like we're still 4 months away, or we're more than 4 months away, and they've been going for a few weeks now. That's a long run in, and most people you would think not going to be even thinking about that until close to the time, but they really are. Like they've guaranteed 5 every Sunday, and I think they've hit 7 or 6 in the first 3 Sundays. Dara, what would you give as maybe a reason why it's working for Unibet, sort of in a way that maybe isn't even working for sites that are much, much bigger?
I think the Unibet Opens, the brand has never been tarnished. I mean, obviously we're biased as Unibet ambassadors, and let's just put that out there. But the Unibet Opens are an amazing experience for recreational players. Unibet has always understood that the game is about the recreationals. Give them a good experience, bring them to a nice place, put them in a nice hotel, have lots of parties, have lots of other stuff for them to do, have lots of affordable side events that they can play, so that even if they don't cash the main event, they've at least had a good experience. They've essentially had a holiday. Also, get your ambassadors to work the events and to interact with players. And, Unibet also, in addition to their ambassadors, they tend to get in a few general people from the media or whatever to come to events too. And that also increases the buzz. So I think Unibet are benefiting from the fact that, we never really pissed people off. So there's no reason for them to be pissed off now. They just come back and they have nothing but positive memories of Unibet Opens in the past. And everybody is really looking forward to the first live Unibet Open in 2 years. The UKIPT, while it was great at its heyday, didn't have that sort of nostalgia for it at the end. It became something pretty sad at the end. Stars have a lot of uphill work to do to make good with poker players again, even though it's a new regime, and it's not Amaya anymore. People still remember all of the horrors that happened under Amaya, and you can't just really simply shrug them off. So I think that's probably the biggest reason, to be honest, apart from the fact that in you they have the most handsome ambassador in the world, so people want to come just to meet you.
You've just stole my joke, because I was about to say, well, they're all excellent answers there. I actually have the answer on my card here, and it is handsome ambassadors. So yeah, thanks for reading my mind as usual. This is almost playing into why people think we're the same person these days.
I know people were congratulating me for my Kasuf piece at the UKIPT. So
I'm glad you took a bit of the heat off me there. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
Well, look, speaking of pent-up live poker desire that I'm sure lots of people are experiencing and getting out of their system at the moment, the WSOP is about to start. It is obviously the biggest festival of wealth redistribution on our calendar each year, and very much a sort of a summer camp, I suppose, for the poker community. Dara talked a little bit about his WSOP prep on the last episode of this show. So I thought, well, Neal, we have you here now. We have a guest finally for the first time in a few weeks. What does your WSOP prep look like?
Well, it's about 98% scrambling to get fucking dollars. And 2% making sure I remember to pack my bags. But no, a lot of stuff, like Vegas is unique, like you go out and you play, and like it's a completely different game from what you like. If you play $1,500 buy-in at the World Series, you're gonna have more often than not a table full of amateurs at the table and stuff. It's a completely different game from playing like an EPT or something where you're gonna have like a lot of strong pros and stuff. So you have to. There's a lot of like cliched, like you have to unlearn a lot of stuff, and just remember it can sometimes take a little bit of time. We have a kind of like an in-joke among us where it's you're not going to go play poker, you're clocking in at the factory, and you sit there and you're not playing the game that you love and the game that you've studied to become good at and stuff. You're just sitting there waiting to catch punts, and just when you have a great hand and someone raises the flop, you just fold, and it's kind of. So there's a lot of like getting into that mindset, but also it's a massive grind. Like I'm always really looking forward to Vegas every time I go out, and then 6 weeks in, I'm like, just get me the fuck out of here, like anywhere. Like I don't care, just get me away. So you have to get prepared for like a long grind, because it is, it's a lot of 12-hour days. It's a lot of disappointment over and over again. But there's a lot that goes into it, but it's not so much studying. It's like, it's not like you're gonna, if I'm going out to go play Monte Carlo and I've sold infinite action, I'm playing 100k buy, and I'm like, right, let's do some fun, let's brush up on some fucking concepts, let's understand, let's sure we're going sharp. This is more a right, hold your breath and let's fucking go, kind of situation. So it's a bit different, but I love the WSOP, and I've always been fairly lucky at it as well. So it's exciting to go play. I'll be interested to see how it goes in the new venue, because it's always a shit show in the first 2 weeks at a venue they've had for 2 decades. So I'm really interested to see how the first 2 weeks are. It's where no one knows what they're doing. But apart from that, I'm excited.
So, well, at last year's WSOP, which obviously was back in October, November, you were being followed around by the BAFTA winning, what do you call him now? BAFTA winning documentarian Greg Clark,
director.
Yes, who was chronicling your adventures, Neal. Since then, he's been with you in Prague, in Monaco, and of course, last week in Dublin too. I imagine he's been with you at home, maybe watching you play some online poker, and maybe other live stops I haven't mentioned as well. Will he be with you in Vegas too this time around? I've heard some content creators having issues with getting media passes actually and permission from the WSOP, and I was concerned that might apply to you guys, although at the same time BBC and BAFTA winning sort of might be a substantive enough calling card. He can bypass any of that.
Yeah, well, speaking of that, he actually just phoned me today saying that they've asked for further details of what he's doing, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad sign, so we'll see. But the plan is that he's going to come out probably in the middle 3 weeks or so to kind of do some prelims and then follow the main event. The main event is essentially where we were originally looking to finish the documentary, ideally winning the main event, of course.
Yes, that would be nice.
That's on my schedule. It's like, win main event, I better go do that. But yeah, so that should hopefully be it. If, of course, I go out and blank every tournament, we're just going to end it in Dublin and pretend I won. That was the end.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but it's we did some like preliminary filming last year when he came out just on his own to kind of see if it was going to be something worth pursuing or whatever, and he seemed to think it was quite interesting and stuff. Although that was me 8 weeks into the series, bricking off the last few events, just fucking raging all the time. So I don't know how great that was for the doc, but
Neal, most of the audience won't even know what the main event looks like, so you could just say that was the main event in the Bonington.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
Yeah, I was like, it's 5.5 buy-ins first this year. It's got 9 entrants. It's a bit of a lower one, but yeah.
It was interesting to me just to see how that relationship has developed over the period too, because when we saw Greg first in Vegas, it was just like this guy who was always in the background, but it seemed like there was very little interaction with you. Whereas in Dublin, it was pretty clear you're pretty close mates now at this point.
I mean, you spend a lot of time with each other, obviously, because it is like, it's a documentary, so it's like I can't just like when I got 9th in Prague, like the high roller in Prague or whatever, I was fucking raging. But it's a documentary. It's like I can't tell them, don't fucking film this. You know what I mean? Like, only film me when I'm happy and winning. You've got to get me when I'm absolutely seething at something as well. So like, you do spend a lot of time in each other's company. He's a super nice guy. He's quite similar to me in a lot of ways. Like I'm quite. I'm focused on cards. I play cards and then I'll forget that I didn't book my flight and I'll show up at the airport and I've got no fucking flight, stuff like that. Whereas like we did an hour-long sequence on the bridge in Prague about like how lucky it is to be out here, stuff like that. And then after the hour, I'm like, right, that was good. I think we got some good stuff. He announces that he didn't have any batteries in his camera. Stuff like that. So it's like a lot of similarities that way. But no, I mean, it's been good. It's been an experience. It's like, me, like I'm quite sociable generally, but I do like my own space at times. So it's like, it can be tough, constantly having stuff in, but it's got like, Greg's, obviously he came in completely cold to poker. So at the very start, it was like, you're having to teach about like the terms and stuff like that. And like the etiquette and stuff like that. Like there was a couple of times where like, I ran a big bluff on a guy in a tournament and then Greg would come over and like, explain how you just bluffed that guy. I'm like, not right. He's right there, mate. You know what I mean? Like, he's fucking raging about it. Can we give it 5 minutes? I'll tell you off table stuff. And there was a few like, because it's its own little, we forget because we're immersed in it, but it's its own little niche world. Like if I say, when you hear people talking poker on break, if you're from a different industry, how the fuck was like, yeah, so basically cold forward with ace king off, and then the board came down, but it was like quite low numbers and stuff, so I had to obviously check at this point. But what the fuck are these people talking about? Like, so there's a lot of that kind of stuff. But that's what you actually said to me now. It's like now that we've got like probably about 35 to 40 minutes of the footage of the hour that we're going to do, we can get to the point now where the audience will have been kind of clued in on a lot of the terminology, so it can get a little bit more complex and stuff now, because as you've led the audience from knowing nothing to knowing a bit about this world and so on. But no, like, it's been great. I mean, he's taken to it a lot quicker than a lot of people would, I'd imagine. I had to tell him at one point, he kept asking me how much was in my pot, and he was asking me what my stack was, and I said, like, listen, see if you say that again, we're fucking cancelling the whole thing. I can't. Right, we're just, that's it, this whole thing's up. He's like, right, fuck yeah. But yeah, like, it blew his mind. Like, when I got ninth in Prague was like an eye-opener for him. I think it was something that he actually showed this to the BBC and they really liked, was me being absolutely fucking raging at winning 50 grand, which is like, to a layman who doesn't understand the game, it's like, you've just won 50,000 euros. That's fucking amazing. It's like, well, when I came into my day, my stack was worth 250 grand. So I've actually lost 200 grand. You know what I mean? And it's very, it was a kind of tough thing to kind of explain, but he picked it up really quickly, and it's been good. And I've got a lot of good stuff, and I'm hoping, it'll show poker, and because there's a lot of, even nowadays, a lot of stigma around poker because it's gambling and stuff like that. And I like to think it'll show poker in a really good light, how lucky I've been through it, how it's a career rather than, I'm not just a roulette pro, which I also am, by the way. But and I really hope it'll do something positive, for the game.
Oh, absolutely hope for that too. One final question on that before we leave that subject is, what has it been like for you in terms of like your performance? Obviously, you said there's a documentary, you want to be yourself. They want you to be yourself. That's sort of the whole point, is that it's going to be a slice of your life in a year. But there is always that tendency, if you're the subject of something, to heighten your own personality or accentuate something about yourself or accentuate aspects of the story. Did you do that? Or if you didn't do that, did you have to sort of stop yourself from doing that?
At the start, I definitely did it, because we watched basically the start. Greg took a kind of he made a quick 6-minute, like, rough idea of how this doc's going to look. And I'm basically, I think through nerves, whenever I was talking, I was just swearing every second word. And I was like, is that how I talk? I mean, maybe it is a little bit, but I
think that is how you talk.
A lot of swearing through nerves and stuff. So I had to but as we've kind of got on further, you get more comfortable and it's just a kind of normal thing. But definitely, like, I mean, my personality is quite laid back, but I mean, just watching someone who doesn't really get that worked up or that annoyed is just going to be a shite documentary, right? He's like, how do you feel today? 6 out of 10 again, my man. Let's go. Like, it's not going to be that interesting. So, like, if anything, like, some of the stuff, like, I mean, I was delighted to win UKIPT Dublin, but I was also exhausted and still hungover. So it's like, he's like, can you give us a big celebration? I was like, and I was like, it's not ideal, right? But no, we managed to get, so he's a lot of times he's like, can you give us a bit of, you've just made the final table, it's worth this amount, blah, blah. And my personality is more of a kind of go with the flow kind of thing. But
he got some great dancing at the bubble of the high roller, just to bring it back to that. There was the get it round yous or get it up yous, and the sort of like you were at a darts match. There's a bit of that as well, now, in fairness. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, that was all natural, to be fair. I didn't even know Greg was there at that point. I was sheer elation. Yeah, it's like
pure elation at doubling up my two bigs.
Yeah, exactly. I was loving life at that point. It was great. That was before the 2.5 day hangover kicked in. So.
Well, look, moving on, next up actually is some very sad news from the poker world. Just a week ago, poker player and famed 2+2 OG poster Todd Terry passed away after a decade-long struggle with frontotemporal dementia, a particularly horrific and incurable condition. A fantastic lawyer in his day, he switched careers to pursue poker in the 2000s and racked up, I think, about 2.5 million in lifetime live tournament winnings, including a career best 430k score for coming second in the 2009 Borgata Winter Open main event. He also had a runner-up finish at the 2007 WSOP and a circuit victory in 2006. Tributes poured in for Terry, who many remember most fondly for his interesting and at times wild contributions to the poker forums. Sean Deeb expressed his sadness, calling him one of the best poker minds, cheated out of what would have been a great career. Tony Dunn said RIP to an OG tournament grinder and prolific poster on 2+2. Todd was always curious and courteous, no matter how much flack he got for posting crazy hands. We'll miss you on the felt. When I first put a wish list of names together for prospective guests for this show, all the way back, and I'm going to guess it was 2015, 2016, Todd was on it. I know you had an evening with him, Dara, at the Irish Open. I'm going to say 2011, 2012, something around that time. Can you tell us a bit about your experiences with him?
I think it was 2011, just before I met you, although you seem to think maybe we met at that Irish Open. I've no memory of that, but my memory of the evening with Todd Terry, as John O'Cruth called it, was I thought I was going to dinner with Jono and a few of the other young lads, and then Todd came along, and I was kind of like, oh wow, we're actually with Todd Terry now. And it's fair to say he completely monopolized the conversation. He told us in no uncertain terms how bad lots of really high big name pros actually were at poker, and we were also cowed. I remember John was saying to me quietly, I'm never going to run a hand by Todd, and he referred to it as an evening with Todd Terry. Now, given the time frame, I mean, it's possible that he was already affected by the disease at that point, which is very sad on reflection. The other sad thing about that evening is, you know, it reminds me of a story when I was I think I was in 5th class, maybe in school, and one of our Christian brothers came in who was a particularly morbid individual, and he looked around the class and he said, statistically, 3 of you will be dead by the age of 25, which was a wonderful thought. We were all looking around and go, well, you know, I think it might be Johnny down there because he's already on drugs. Or, but when I think back to that evening, I mean, Todd isn't even the only person who isn't still with us, because Max Heinzelman was also there that evening. And my main memory of the evening, apart from Todd telling us who was terrible at poker, which seemed to be almost everybody, was that it was Rupert Elder was there as well. And Rupert and Max had just gotten heads up in the previous EPT, maybe EPT Deauville, I think. And Rupert had won and Max had been second. And then Max went on to come second in the next EPT, or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe they came first and second in the next one. I can't remember the exact timeline, but it was in the middle of that spell where Max got second in back-to-back EPTs. And Mickey Peterson was there as well. So it was quite an illuminary of like online players, online young players at the time. And then you had this very opinionated American in the middle of it all, completely not reading the room, just telling us all how bad everybody was at poker. But he certainly made a big impression, it's fair to say.
Yeah, he sure did. Neil, did you know him at all?
I was just a little bit after his time. I think I played with him 1 or 2 times live, but it was, I mean, this was just when like my World Series schedule would have been the highest buy-in would have been a 1K WSOP event. So I do remember playing with him, and
he told me that he thought you were terrible.
Yeah, he was right. But no, he was very pleasant at the table. I read a lot of his posts through on, I believe it was TBT on 2+2 over the years and stuff like that. And he, I think he just was kind of winding down his career with the illness, just as I was starting to come up in my own career. But I mean, a lot of people that I really like and respect have a lot of love for him. So I'm going to take their word for it. You know, like he seemed like he would be, if they're saying he's a great guy, sounds like a great guy to me.
Yeah, our sincere condolences obviously go out to any friends and family out there. Very sad news. Finally, in lighter news, actually, it's kind of big news for us at the chip race here. We are delighted to announce that The Unibet Open is returning. It's coming back to Malta in September. But for us specifically, and this is the kind of the cool part, the big side event at that festival is going to be the 550 chip race mystery bounty. Yes, it will be branded after us. You and me, Dara, we've made it big time now. This is a format obviously taking the poker world by storm. We spoke about it a lot earlier on the show, but we are really delighted to be able to put our stamp on a Unibet festival in this way. There's no high roller at the event, so this will be the main other side event. And in fact, we are trying to convince Unibet at the moment to put on some satellites specific to this one. So maybe some shorter packages, 2-day packages where people can come play this event as their sort of main event as well, and yeah, you know, get a little taste of what these mystery bounties are all about. They're obviously good fun. Dara, what did you think when you heard the news?
Yeah, I was delighted. Obviously, it helps me flog more videos, so anything that does that is good. No, seriously, like this format is incredibly fun, and it's probably the one great discovery that live organizers have made in the last 5 years or so. PKOs have kind of revolutionized online poker, but for obvious reasons, they haven't really caught on live. But this format is definitely a winner among recreationals, and as I said earlier, like recreationals drive the market. We have to follow them. You know, we might bitch about the fact that now we have to put a large portion of the prize pool on a roulette wheel, but you know, so be it. If that's what they want. Hopefully by then people have bought lots of videos, but not so much that the format is completely killed and everybody is max later edging and taking off.
Hopefully we make it to September at least before that.
September would be nice. But I think I do think like there's going to be a big mystery bounty at the World Series, and I think that will really kickstart the format. I think there's going to be so much buzz around that. I suspect that'll be the second biggest tournament of the WSOP after the main event. The one that creates the most buzz. And I think pretty much every organizer at the moment, I'm getting calls from different organizers who are running tournaments in the second half of the year, and they all want to have a mystery bounty, and they're all trying to work out all of the logistical stuff, like how much the prize pool should be bounties. Can we make some tweaks? There may be some interesting innovations coming up. One thing which I alluded to earlier is that when the big prize goes, often that's a bit of a damp squib, and people go, oh, now it's just a normal tournament. So one organizer, I won't say his name for obvious reasons, but he has come up with the idea of holding back at least one of the big bounties until the final table. And that would create an extra dynamic in itself. That would make it very interesting on the second last table, where, you know, people really want to make the last table with enough chips to possibly win that big bounty.
Yeah, I like that innovation. The other innovation I was trying to push for our own one, although I think it's going to be a case of like we have to do it sort of the first iteration way before we start tweaking it, is that you have a very big first prize bounty, maybe rather than like two big ones or whatever, but that first one, half it goes on the head of the person. So if they do win it, it's sort of in play immediately, half of it for everyone else. So let's say it's 10k, 5k, and immediately if you knock that person out.
I actually tweeted that a while back when I was drunk, because like my bright idea, the one thing you have with that is it's really open to collusion.
Oh, that is true. And that, yeah, right. You know, you're right. That's a great counterpoint there, because I suppose we're feeling out this new ways of doing
it's like a brainstorming session, you know, as well. The one with, I like that idea of holding one back to the final table. However, what you will need to be prepared for is that now makes the pay jump from 10th to 9th fucking massive. So you're going to end up with a World Series kind of stalling thing that you'll need to kind of counteract as well. But I mean, it's to say, like, there's always going to be stuff that comes up with anything that you do, you know?
Yeah, so. Speaking of a sort of implied collusion or whatever, there was a weird moment I had where we were not through the bubble yet. This is in the Irish Open one where I did bubble. But myself and Jamie Flynn looked at each other and I went, what do you have? And he was on the button and he goes 52k. And I was in the big blind and I just posted my ante and I counted myself and I have 52k. And then we both and we were the two shortest people and we both kind of looked at each other and went, you know, because immediately the same thing dawned on us, which is that actually it's just super smart for both of us to just jam into each other here, because the next ladder or even making the money, you know, unlikely as it might be with both of us being the shorty, but the bounty was worth like 7 buy-ins or whatever it was. And so it just again, but then that's a problem, because you can't have people kind of like looking at each other going, oh, look, here we go. So like, this has to be sort of worked out, and I guess there will be some maybe adjustments will be needed.
I mean, I think it's the same as a lot of like the thing. There are going to be opportunities for collusion and stuff, but there's opportunities for collusion in every form of poker, and it's the game is policed by the TD, the players, stuff like that, and it's just you can have these nice formats, these nice things, as long as because although the people there's scum in poker, they will try and collude. There will be people that try to do it, but as long as you have a strong, like TD presence and then there shouldn't be an issue, because you can, as long as you have competent staff, which most operators have great staff nowadays, to police it and to make the correct rulings and hand out DQs if needed, then there's no reason why you couldn't do that,
Well, look, Neal, I assume over the next couple of months there's going to be a bidding war for your signature as a brand ambassador for one of the big sites.
A reverse auction to which company I'll embarrass the most.
But I would like to say you're cordially invited to the chip race 550 bounty in Malta and to the Unibet. I hope you will come along. Maybe it might be a worthwhile stop on your poker journey.
September holiday, so get the family out. It could be nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Seaside time.
Late September, weather's very nice. It might make for a very nice stop. In the meantime, by the way, guys, for you guys out there, we will be having a €50 chip race bounty tournament online. We have scheduled that for Sunday, June 5th. There will be the usual giveaways, extra prizes added courtesy of Unibet. Haven't got all the details, times, or anything like that yet, but keep an eye on our social medias. I'm sure in the coming days we'll have finalized all of that good stuff. It remains for me to say thank you so much, Neal Farrell, for joining us this week.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you, and congratulations once again on your success in Dublin. And Dara O'Kearney, thank you so much as usual.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Niall. He was an incredibly popular winner in Dublin. Irish kind of very much saw him as one of our own. He comes over and he plays tournaments in Mallow. So, I mean, he's paid his dues. And one thing that was very obvious at the event, every table I went to, people were talking about Feraldo and what a great guy he is to play with, how much fun he is at the table. So.
Everyone must have been pissed.
I think that was after you had bought the entire room.
After the bribe rounds had went around. Yeah, definitely.
On that note, thanks so much, guys.